Hello and welcome back to another episode of KSP POV, where we play Kerbal Space Program in first person. Today we are going to be trying to acquire some science. We're going to be making another trip back to the Mun, but this time as a rover. We don't want to send our Kerbals up there just yet. We still have to redesign the Phoenix 1 to be a better lander. So instead we are going to focus on a rover today. As you see here, I'm opening up the tech tree. I'm going to point out this is the node that we're trying to unlock. We want to get these two command pods, but that's 300 science and we have nowhere near that. So hopefully by sending this rover to the Mun, it can move around to a couple different biomes and get us some science. So I know that this is going to be the big brother to the Busy Bee, so I'm going to make it, I was thinking about making it a little beefier. I go ahead and throw on some of the collapsible ASET command seats on there, because I'm thinking I might have the crew meet up with this rover at some point and drive it around to different biomes and everything. So see here, I'm throwing on some life support, but then I realized that made it way too tall, and the Science Junior is just going to be too much to take on a rover. So we decided to drop it down right back to the same body as the Busy Bee. So it's not going to be exactly a big brother to the Busy Bee, but it's definitely going to be a little bit beefier. The wheels themselves already are going to be adding a huge factor that the Busy Bee just didn't have. So we got in there our basic science experiments, and then the scan there done that from forget which mod, roving science. It's from the roving science mod. So I go ahead and put these solar panels on, but I realized later that they're not retractable, so we end up getting rid of them. But I thought that they looked really fun as kind of like bee wings. I thought that would have made a great touch to it, but they're not retractable, so it's not going to work. This bar kind of bugged out, the piston extension bar, so it wasn't letting me adjust it, so I switched it out for just some construction pieces. And so we go ahead, and before we switched them out, we went ahead and named this the Big Bumble. So that's going to be the title of this craft, and this potentially the series. We might end up making more than one of them, so that'll be fun. But here we're putting on the camera arm, and so this is not going to only have just the frontward facing camera, but it's going to be able to lift up to a higher point, and it's also going to be able to turn from the left to the right to just kind of get a better look around, because because we can. This is new technology that we didn't have when we created the Busy Bee, so we're gonna utilize it here. So now I'm just putting in the action groups, and that's when I realized that the solar panels won't work. These ones are nice and compact, but they didn't work either. These, I don't exactly like how long they are. I feel that it's going to be dangerous for the craft, but maybe I don't have to extend them all that often, since we do have the solar panels that are on the top of the craft. So we just go with those for now. So now I'm just putting in all the commands for the different action groups. The reaction wheel on the bottom is on its own action group to just toggle it on and off, depending on if we need it. But after seeing how well it worked in the last rover, we decided we have to have it, I think, in all of our rovers. So here I'm just setting up the camera. I'm having each little different motion on different things, so camera up, camera left, camera right, and then a recentering of the camera, as well as a collapsing of the entire arm itself in a single action group, so that way we can reset our view whenever we need in multiple different ways. So if we want to leave the arm up but then reset our view, we have that possibility. But then we can also just instantly with one button just return it so we're at the driving camera, which is its standard. So now I'm trying to figure out how to put on a reserve battery pack, and this is where I ended up putting it. So we're going to go ahead and start a simulation. One thing I like about those wheels is that they can retract and seat so it can fit in a smaller capsule. I like that. So now we're just going to be testing each one of the action groups to make sure that they do what they're supposed to do. Yeah, you see how long those wings are, basically? It's too much, I think, but what are you going to do? It's the price you pay for a compact Rover. Alright, so now I forgot what the number 2 action group was, and then I realized, oh, it's the reaction wheel. So I'm testing it out here, and you can see it definitely moves the craft in a different way. So I go ahead and turn that off. And then here's where I realized that it would probably be better to turn the rear wheel steering off. But of course I only do one wheel for right now. And that's when I realized that the back right one had it on as well. So yeah, I think just having front wheel steering is going to be our best bet. Okay, yeah, I also forgot what the 5 and 6 or the 4 and 5 action groups are, and that's to start and stop the scan. For the scan there, been there, scanned that. So yeah, our camera arm is working just fine. It's looking left. It's looking right. And then we're gonna come back to the center. And we're just taking a look through the camera. It's going to be a different view, obviously, when we do it, when we launch it onto the MUN, because we're going to be doing it through the mission control room. But at least now we'll have a pretty advanced camera to work with that I think will help us out. I think the looking left and the looking right is going to be a huge aspect for being able to control it and determine which way we need to go, because all of the rocks on the MUN have collision now. So that was a good test. I think we're pretty happy with that, and I think it's time to send it. We're gonna have a pretty standard lift vehicle, so we don't really need to test it all that much. What I did here is I just needed a little bit of a separation so I could get the Rover into the fairing. And so yeah, like I said, it's going to be a fairly standard lift vehicle. We put on this big tank at first, but then we change it out for one of the regular 2.5 meters, and just throw a Terrier engine on there and some landing gear, because we want to make sure that this lands upright before we drop it down. And we want it to be controlled by that probe core until we're ready to decouple it and control it from the rover itself, because the rover is in a position where its up is different than what it would be for a rocket, just a regular probe core taking off. So until then, we're gonna use that core. So yeah, so if you've been keeping up with this series, you recognize this vehicle very much. Just some Pila engines, some Separatrons, some fuel ducts, a larger, faster stage to get to orbit, and then an efficient, smaller stage to do the rest of everything. It just works, Why mess with it if it works? And since we don't need to make huge trips to other planets just yet, this is what we're going to work with. But hopefully we'll be getting there soon. I mean, I was kind of disappointed that our research bodies mod prioritized Jewel and Tylo over Minmus, considering that it was in our in our neighborhood. I was really hoping to be able to send some Kerbals to Minmus, grab even more science, and like really start unlocking some things in the tech tree, and potentially even starting construction on a Minmus base where we can start harvesting resources and building things via the extraplanetary launch pads. Okay, so for some reason during this playthrough, I kept getting this glitch every time that I staged the rocket. It would change the camera view to not only an external view, but a very difficult view itself. I don't know how to change that, and at one point it does end up kind of spoiling the end because of that glitch. We weren't able to stay in the first person IVA mode during a part, and that really annoyed me. I don't know what happened, if anybody knows what's going on, if there's a conflicting mod or something. I do know that this updated, the probe control room IVA mod updated, because there are now Kerbals in the desk. I am, instead of just being an unnamed viewpoint, I am now Gene Kerman sitting as the flight director. And then we have Gus Kerman to our right, and then someone else to our left. But now we have actual Kerbals, so I definitely know that it updated at some point. And I think maybe that's a new bug, but I'm not sure. So if anybody else knows or can confirm it one way or the other. Yeah, see, there it goes. I staged off my boosters and it changed my camera. And since this is the only mission that we're doing, yeah, you see that Kerbal right there? But yeah, since this is the only mission that we're doing in this episode, I'm going to leave it largely unedited. It's a little bit relaxing to be able to do something with limited fear of disaster. You know, if we do end up crashing this rover and we just don't get to use it at all, that would be disappointing. But we don't have to hold another funeral. And that's means a lot. In this series, we've been doing a lot of killing. So if we can just save one Kerbal from that fate, we've done our job. So now I'm using MechJeb to plot in a circularization burn. And I realize what I need to do is understand that MechJeb circularization burn will be pointed down too low and will start too late, that we will end up in the atmosphere again. So all we need to do is just lift our nose up a little bit when we're doing it, so we're not directly on the maneuver hold maneuver. What would you call that? Node? That's not a node. But yeah, we need to hold prograde instead, and slightly above prograde actually. You can tell that because the time to apoapsis when using just a regular plotted MechJeb maneuver, the time to apoapsis drops suddenly and it just keeps dropping. Means that you're not lifting yourself up. So you see we're lifting our nose up just ever so slightly, and that's going to be enough to get us to circularize without problem. And here we are. And yep, I staged again. I don't know if you caught it, but there was that camera glitch. So now we're targeting the Mun. And since I want to aim for a polar orbit, I decide to plot it out in the map view instead of using MechJeb or Astrogator. because I wanted to see if I could get myself into a polar orbit. Sadly, my inclination, I say sadly, but sadly my inclination was pretty good on my takeoff, and so try as I may, a polar orbit is just not really in the books here. So I'm going to have to make an adjustment mid-flight to try to come over. But for now, this maneuver will work. And so we go ahead and deploy our solar panels, but just the solar panels on the outside of the ship. What we ended up doing was we attached those solar panels to the Action Group 2, so the one that controls the reaction wheel. So it just turned that reaction wheel off, I believe. Or maybe, no, it turned it on. So the reaction wheel will be ready to go when we're landing. And it also probably will give us a little bit extra control when we land. But the reason why I did that instead of just using the button to extend the solar panels is I didn't want the solar panels inside the fairing to extend. Alright, so now we're just coming up on the MUN. And what we're going to do is we're going to get ourselves a -1 kilometer closest approach, so that way we can smash our lower stage, even though it still has a bunch of fuel. We can smash our lower stage into the surface and not have to deal with space debris. Because I was initially going to circularize my burn, but once we get there, you'll see what I end up doing. So. Yep, so I just staged it off. So now that is floating behind us. And yeah, so we have our collision course. So we go ahead and put in a maneuver just midway through our journey and start tweaking the numbers so that way we can get ourselves a polar orbit. Yeah, sometimes if you can't get the trajectory that you want at first, sometimes just plot it in and make a mid-course adjustment, and you'll still be able to have some control, because the farther out you do it, the less you actually end up having to do in order to achieve the same goal. So instead of trying to brute force your way into the correct position at the very first point, the very first time you can, maybe just get what works and then adjust it as is later down the road, down the space, if you will. So yep, so now we're just fast forwarding time a little bit, getting ourselves closer to the maneuver, about 50 minutes out. Then we really fast forward, and we miss our mark, but it doesn't matter because we're only burning a very small amount of delta V. So missing our mark isn't a big deal, especially this far out. But as you can see, we did pretty well. And so now, instead of doing a capture burn, I end up just deciding to land on my first pass through. I think a capture burn would have actually been a better mode. We do end up landing a little bit shy of where we wanted to go, and so it's gonna be a hassle to maneuver our rover northwards, because we were aiming for the poles, but we end up landing in a different biome. So yeah, time warping while in the pro control room is not always the best idea. Sometimes it will glitch you out. Oh yeah, that's that lower stage, that debris right there is our lower stage of the rocket, and we're watching it kind of float with us to see how it's going to impact the MUN. I was hoping that we could get some science from the seismographer that we have on the surface, but I think we might have exhausted all the science we can get from it, because once it slams, oh yeah, the computer froze up a lot during this sphere of influence change, but you know, we eventually made it. But yeah, it's just kind of interesting to see, like, you know, as we're approaching in, to see the space debris just right alongside us, but in a trajectory that we would have been had we not changed. So I just fast forward time, and then the debris collides, but we don't get any science. So yeah, so I think that experiment is done. So yeah, so I switch out of map view, and I realize that I can't see my craft. I can't adjust the angle of the camera. You know, time warping in the mission control room really glitched out the control of this. I do end up, because I was worried about saving here and trying to get out and then change it around, so I just decided to do the burn in map view to kind of still remain in the IVA state of mind, but I wasn't really sure what else to do. I did burn in EVA view a little bit, because I was trying to see if I could possibly see the engines go or anything, but as you can see, we weren't able to see anything. Yep, so I just switched back on to the map view and watch my trajectory come into place. I should have, like I said before, I should have maybe come in and orbited itself, got myself to a smaller height, altitude, and corrected my orbit so I could have guaranteed that I landed in the poles. But instead I landed into this kind of flat Midlands area. Yep. So I decided to save game and then just restart the save itself. But I believe the issue still persists. But at least now that we have control of, we can see our vessel, and in a moment we'll have control of it again through the IVA mode. Yep, so we're going to go ahead and come back into the mission control room. Right about here. No? Yeah, I guess it froze up a lot when I was... Yeah, as you can see, the altimeter at the top is frozen at 697. There we go. Yeah, for some reason this was really buggy on this mission. Yep, so I staged the fairing, and once again it brought me to the exterior view. And so I go ahead and put down my landing gears. It's a little bit early. I mean, I'm still 197 kilometers above the surface. But, I mean, we're coming down basically vertically. Much of our horizontal speed has been killed off. So there's really no harm in putting them down this early. I mean, there's really no harm in putting them down at any time once you're out of the atmosphere. And a funny thing that I didn't think about or plan for, but ended up working out in my favor, was when I extended the landing gear of the the rocket that's going to be taking us there. It also extended the landing gear, the wheels of the rover itself, because they were retracted to begin with to fit inside the fairing, and so it just automatically opened our wheels for us. So that's one less thing that we have to do on our way down. And the camera's not going to be any help. It's not even really attached at the moment because no feed is actually going through. But the camera's not going to help because it's pointed upwards. We're not going to be able to see our descent at all, because we programmed it to turn left, to turn right, and to turn center, but not to face backwards, and so we can't even point it towards the ground. Although that is something that we could work on in our design for the next one. So yeah, so we just got a long ways to go down, so we're just time warping, but of course we're very hesitant about time warping too fast because, again, we're on a collision course, so it could be very easy to just lose control of the time warp and just slam the craft into the surface, and then the whole mission will be a wash and we'll have to do it again. So you gotta strike the right balance between going fast enough that it doesn't take as long as it should. Yeah, that was me trying to adjust the cameras, but again, they weren't actually connected. I had to press that green arrow on the right. I had to press that in order to activate the cameras. But I didn't know that yet, so my turning left and right just didn't tell me what I wanted to know because it wasn't even active. But here we are, just 2 minutes from the surface, and I see that I have a little bit of horizontal velocity, so I'm just shifting back and forth trying to kill it, but the lowest I can get it to is about 5.6 meters per second. So I was probably horizontal velocity in a different area, but I only chose to do the north-south. So it was probably an east-west velocity, but I figured 5 meters isn't too much to worry about. Alright, so we're getting close. 56 seconds. 18 kilometers. So I throw on the throttle a little bit, and now I'm starting to go back and forth on whether or not I should burn because we're close, but then I realized it's 7 kilometers, 6.75 kilometers, not meters. So we still have quite a bit of room between us and the surface. But I still burn myself to get myself down to a lower vertical velocity, just so I have less to work against later. It's really hard to do a suicide burn in this view. I have not yet perfected it. How to know when to fire and how to know what the last moment really is. So I don't have the most efficient landing, but we are going low enough that I don't have to fight too much. I don't have to fight the gravity too much. Yeah, so now about 150 meters from the surface, 10 seconds to impact. And I'm just barely throwing up the throttle, just enough to kind of slow us down. And we go ahead and get ourselves to a very low vertical velocity. And as you can see, our horizontal velocity just disappeared for some reason. It just took care of itself. So 10 meters above the ground, and then I send a little bit, but we recover very quickly. And before we know it, we've got contact. But I can see that I'm starting to tip over because I've got a high slope. And so I should go ahead and stage. But like I said, the camera returned to EVA mode. And here it ended up getting blocked up, so I couldn't even return back to the mission control room. But luckily our reaction wheel had been turned on before we started, and so just using the WASD keys, I was able to land it on all fours. But like I said, that kind of spoiled it because I was really hoping to use the camera itself to figure out whether or not I was upright or which direction I needed to go, or even like to adjust my course mid-flight. I was really hoping to be able to use that to land and get myself situated from the moment that it left the rocket. So I was really disappointed in that. So again, if anybody knows either the cause of that glitch or a way to fix it or anything like that, please let me know in the comments below, because yeah, that bugged me a little bit. I made it all this way, and then right at the last second I got frustrated with it. But we're here, so let's go ahead and do some science. It turns out that we can only transmit 2 of the experiments, so we must have grabbed those things before. But 2 experiments is still enough. We end up getting about 80 some odd science from just those 2 alone. Yeah, and so right now we are parked on the edge of a crater and facing down. We're going to need to figure out which direction to go. There's our stage. Still a bunch of fuel in there, so if we ever want to get it, all we got to do is find this one particular crater amidst all of them and get it. But anyways, that's where I'm going to leave this episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, please consider giving me a like, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.